Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Tuesday, December 8th, 2020, 10 a.m. Central, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Well, it's Tuesday. That makes it a cartography and world building day. You got to stick in the world building vein that we were in last week with the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide. We were looking at placement of monetary treasure last week, so we're going to continue on with the next section of the DMG and placement of magic items. That'll keep us moving right along. We've only got a couple of weeks left for the daily shows, so we got to knock some of this stuff out, finish it off. I think most of this first year, well, since March, right, doing these daily shows, we've gone through a great deal of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Just kind of looking over what was actually there in the text, doing some interpretation, discussing some of it in regard to how I might do it differently. It certainly is not to say that anybody else has to do it differently. You can be by the book. You can do it differently, but not the same as me. I mean, they're guidelines. So, you do what you want to do when you're a Dungeon Master running first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So, it is very much up to every individual game to be run the way someone runs it. Always caution people. Try to be consistent. When you do break consistency, do it for a very good reason. Don't just do it willy-nilly. You want to have some idea why you're doing various things, and that's important. We got hanging out over there today. Death Angel Shadows in the house, lurking and lurking and lurking. XL 809 Mark, hanging out there. Searcher. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Tzircher. Zircher? Like a tsetse fly? I don't know. Let me know. Anywho, let's dive in. Let's take a look at this placement of magic items thing. I'm going to bring it over onto the other screen so I can see it more easily. There it is. And we'll adjust the camera a little bit so that I'm way down in the corner, as it should be. If I'm going to lean and stuff, I guess I better edge it over a little bit. There we go. Placement of magic items. Just as it is important to use forethought and consideration placing valuable metals and other substances with monsters or otherwise, hiding them in dungeon or wilderness, the placement of magic items is a serious matter. Thoughtless placement of powerful magic items has been the ruination of many a campaign. So true. So true. Not only does this cheapen what should be rare and precious, it gives player characters undeserved advantage and empowers them to become virtual rulers of all they survey. Which is not to say that's a bad thing that they should become rulers, but not that way, right? This is, in part, the fault of this writer. Oh, Gary, taking the blame. Who deeply regrets not taking the time and space in D&D, original 3 little booklets, to stress repeatedly the importance of moderation. Powerful magic items were shown, after all, on the tables, and the chance for random discovery of these items was given, so the uninitiated DM cannot be severely faulted for merely following what was set before him or her in the rules. Had the whole been prefaced with an admonishment to use care and logic in placement or random discovery of magic items, had the intent, meaning, and spirit of the game been more fully explained, much of the giveaway aspect of such campaigns would have willingly been squelched by the DMs. The sad fact is, however, that this was not done. So many campaigns are little more than a joke, something that the DMs jape at and ridicule, something that better DMs jape at and ridicule, rightfully so on the surface, because of the foolishness of player characters with astronomically high levels of experience and no real playing skill. These godlike characters boast and strut about with retinues of ultra-powerful servants and scores of mighty magic items, artifacts, relics adorning them as if they were Christmas trees decked out with tinsel and ornaments. Not only are such Monty Hall, Haul, games a crashing bore for most participants, they are a headache for their DMs as well, for the rules of the game do not provide anything for such play. No reasonable opponents, no rewards, nothing. The creative DM can, of course, develop a game which extrapolates from the original to allow such play, but this is a monumental task to accomplish with even passable results. And those attempts I have seen have been uniformly dismal. Let me tell you about a little Monty Hall-ish game I was involved with early on. Before me and the gang that I played with regularly in the early days got fully immersed in D&D, one game we played was at a rec center when somebody who had the original booklets had come up to Lake Geneva, brought them back down into Waukegan with them, and we were, I think we're already introduced to the game, but this was definitely an early foray into D&D. The original booklets, original D&D, it's the only thing that was out at that point. And this DM not only did the Monty Hall thing, and he was older. He was late teens, early 20s, and we were just a bunch of scrappy little 11 and 12-year-olds, whatever. Maybe 13, one of us or two of us. And hanging out at the game club at the rec center, and we were always the youngest ones. Older players would let us sometimes play in the miniatures game and give us a little unit in the corner where we couldn't do any damage and let us play and teach us. And, well, this guy's teaching us his game of D&D because he DM'd. But he also had a couple of DMPCs in the form of a big strapping fighter that he named Thor and a hobbit thief that he named Loki. So this had to be a little further in, right? Because it had to include... Well, you know what? I'm not even sure it was a thief. I think he played it as if it was a burglar, but I think he considered it just a hobbit fighter. So he has Thor and Loki. Thor, of course, has the thunder hammer that you can throw and returns and all of that. And the hobbit had like whatever sneaky magic items were available, and they were out front, and the rest of us all had first level characters. They were high level, and we would just follow them around as they busted down every door in the dungeon, and they killed everything that was inside, and they took all the treasure and made us carry some of it. You know, oh well, here's, pull your weight. I can only carry so much. So you guys got to carry this. We were basically just tagging along for him to run his own dungeon as a DM with his own characters as if they were player characters. And they were, of course, outclassing us. They got all the treasure. He was Monty Halling himself with us youngsters as an audience, and it was pretty ridiculous. So you can understand he was doing things by the book in that it was rolling the dice and everything was, do you hit, do you don't, and it was magic was rolled up, treasure was rolled up. It was all by the book, but without some sense of moderation, without some sense also that probably your own characters. You can imagine the experience we would have had as 4 or 5 youngsters playing in his dungeon if he had been a DM that had set up the adventure for us without his own DM PCs in the game, and it was more of an experience for us than just following along. I guess it was a teaching experience. We learned pretty quickly that you don't run games that way, that you don't use DM PCs outshining all of the player characters, because that's really what a DM PC is. It's not a NPC, which is what you would normally utilize as dungeon masters, but rather these are ones that you're invested in, and they've got to be the best, and you run them as if they were player characters, and that ain't what you should be doing when you're running a game. You should be running a game for other players. Well, let's go on, because we haven't really hit any of this except the advice so far. Another nadir of dungeon mastering is the killer dungeon concept. These campaigns are a travesty of the role-playing adventure game, for there is no development and identification with carefully nurtured player persona. In such campaigns, the sadistic referee takes unholy delight in slaughtering endless hordes of hapless player characters with unavoidable death traps and horrific monsters set to ambush participants as soon as they set foot outside the door of their safe house. Only a few of these killer dungeons survive to become infamous. However, as their participants usually tire of the idiocy after a few attempts of enjoyable gaming. But lucky ones manage to find another, more reasonable campaign. But others, not realizing the perversion of their DM's campaign, give up the adventure gaming and go back to whatever pursuits they followed in their leisure time before they tried. And there you go. Now, what if the aforementioned DM that I was playing under with Thor and Loki had gone a different route? What if he had had us just with our little first level characters going into the same stuff that his 2 powerful DM PCs were struggling to handle, right? What if we were put into that? We'd have been dead in 5 minutes. And the same is true as what Gary's saying here, is that we may well have just gotten bored. This game's no fun. We're just lining up for the slaughter. What fun is that? So let's not play. In any event, either side of this spectrum, give away the house, not good. Destroy all the players every moment of the game, not good either. Neither one piques the interest nor challenges the players, so you want to be careful about both extremes. AD&D means to set right both extremes. Neither the giveaway game nor the certain death campaign will be lauded here. In point of fact, DMs who attempt to run such affairs will be drumming themselves out of the ranks of AD&D entirely. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons aims at providing not only the best adventure game, but also the best refereeing of such campaigns. Now we get into what the chapters are really about. And fair warning, all of that. It needed to be said. And maybe that was the best place for it. Because it may well be that people that come from the other game who think either way would definitely read the placement of magic items section. So maybe it needed to be there. Or maybe that's just another random placement of information, not not organized in quite the best way. But you know what? It's the first time this was ever done. Nothing against the people that put it together. It's this is speaking with the hindsight, the retro view, having seen 45 plus years of game books organized. It's easy to look back on this and say, well, it's a bit of a hodgepodge. I tell you, I'm loving it all the time when I first read it, and I still love it. So let's dig back in. Initial placement of magic items in Dungeon and Wilderness is a crucial beginning for the campaign. In all such places, you must never, capitalized, allow random determination to dictate inclusion of any, capitalized, meaningful magic items. Where beginning, low-level player characters are concerned, this stricture also applies to the placement of any magic items. Any item of magic. Furthermore, you need never feel constrained to place or even allow any item in your campaign just because it is listed in the tables. Certainly, you should never allow a multiplicity or possibly even duplication of the more powerful items. To fully clarify this, consider the development of a campaign as follows. And we get into a nice little example here. In stocking the setting for initial play in the campaign, you must use great care. Consider the circumstances of the milieu and the number of player characters who will be active in it. Then, from the lists of possible items, choose a selection. Choose a selection which is commensurate with the setting and the characters involved. For example, you might opt for several potions, a scroll of one spell, a wand, a pair of boots of elven kind, several +1 magic arrows, and a +1 magic dagger. As these items will be guarded by relatively weak creatures, you will allow only weak items. The potions will be healing, heroism, levitation, or the like. The spell on the scroll will be low level, first or second. If you do decide placement of the wand is appropriate, you will make certain its guardian will use its defense, and the instrument will have a few charges left in any event. Which is to say, it won't be a fully charged up wand, with a power which is not out of line with the level of the characters likely to acquire it. The magic boots will be worn by a denizen of the area, while the magic arrows might not be used against the adventurers. The +1 dagger will be. With all this in mind, you place the items in the countryside and first/upper level of the dungeon-like setting. You never allow more than a single item or grouping, such as 3 magic arrows, to a treasure, nor more treasures with magic items than 1 in 5 or 1 in 10, as this is an initial adventuring setting. As the campaign grows and deeper dungeons are developed, you exercise the same care in placement of selected and balanced magic items. Of course, at lower levels of the dungeon, you have more powerful single items or groupings of disparate items, but they are commensurate with the challenge and ability of the participants. Guardians tend to employ the items routinely, and others are hidden ingeniously to escape detection. Likewise, in the expanding world around the starting habitat, you place monsters and treasures, some with magic. You, the DM, know what is there. However, as you have decided what it will be and have put it there for a purpose, whether for the overall direction of the campaign, some specific task, or the general betterment of player characters to enable them to expand their adventuring capabilities because they are skillful enough to face greater challenges if they manage to furnish themselves with the wherewithal to do so. In those instances where a randomly discovered monster has a nearby lair, and somehow this lair contains treasure, do not allow the dice to dictate a disaster for your campaign. If their result calls for some item of magic which is too powerful, one which you are not certain of, or one which you do not wish to include in the game at this time, you will be completely justified in ignoring it and rolling until a result you like comes up. Or you can simply pick a suitable item and inform players that this is what they found. It is only human nature for people to desire betterment of their position. In this game, it results in player characters seeking ever more wealth, magic, power, influence, and control. As with most things in life, the striving after is usually better than the getting. To maintain interest and excitement, there should always be some new goal, some meaningful purpose. It must also be kept in mind that what is unearned is usually unappreciated. What is gotten cheaply is often held in contempt. It is a great responsibility to dungeon and master a campaign. If you do so with intelligence, imagination, ingenuity, and innovation, however, you will be well rewarded. Always remember this when you select magic items for placement as treasure! Exclamation point. So what do we got there? We got ourselves a big old pile of really good advice. We got examples of the wrong way to do things to two different extremes. And we've got a lot of nuts and bolts, early game, early campaign advice with a bit of extended advice toward what you should do as the game develops, as your campaign extends beyond the initial game sessions and your characters. The PCs of the players begin to become more powerful and better themselves as adventurers and take on higher and tougher challenges. It's all good. It's all pretty straightforward. Can't disagree with any of that. I think it's wonderful when you see a section like this. And this is a kind of a section that when anybody says, oh, we never had balance back in the... No. Point to stuff like this. Point to the tables for random monster, even wandering monsters, because all of those are on graduated scales to be increasingly more difficult in higher level games and higher level campaigns. And the advice couldn't be more clear that you are definitely scaling your game with the characters, with the PCs as they grow and as they expand their horizons. So yeah, there's always balance. This is not to say that you can't create a campaign world, a setting where there aren't some things that are beneath the notice. A lot of low-level stuff lying around out in the open that's easy to take care of, and you can waste your time on it, and you're not going to get much out of it. As you get higher level, it's a flick of your finger, and you can take care of these encounters. That doesn't mean those shouldn't be lying around in places. It definitely makes sense in the game world for those to be in places where, a single goblin hermit with a couple of coins to scrape together, living in a cave not far from town? Absolutely. Why not place him in a bigger dungeon, 3rd, 4th level down? Because he wouldn't live more than 5 minutes in a place like that. So it just makes sense in the idea of overlapping campaign biomes that these things have to get tougher and tougher the further away from civilization that you become. Hey, Mark, how's it going? It's all right. You'll watch it later. pretty fun. It's such a great section of the DMG. I do advise you to check it out and watch it. I am going to say though that I am done with this for the day, so I am going to wind her on down. Hey, Mom, crap, you missed the show. Oh, it's a good thing somebody records these and puts them puts them up on YouTube, huh? Henry, you weren't here the last couple of days, so let me add you into the old list. I think I'm going to dig through some of my DVDs and find some classic or maybe books. Maybe I could find an old book that I've got. Oh, I know what I've got. I think I've got a couple of duplicates of Flashing Swords. Some of the great early 70s short stories that were compilations by multiple authors. Those would be pretty interesting. Look that up. Tell me what you think of that stuff. Anyway, I think we're done for the day then. Let me just close out that list then. We've got everybody on there who's here. I will say thanks to you guys, and thanks for chiming in, even if it's at the end. You chime in whenever you show up, because I want to get you guys on that list and make sure you're included. You too, Death Angel Shadow, absolutely. Welcome, glad you're here. And I will say thanks to all of you for checking out the OK Grognard Show. Today has been Tuesday, December 8th. We did a world building side of the cartography and world building equation, looking at placement of magic items. It's a great section. You should definitely watch the replay on YouTube in about an hour after I get it up over there. I will say tomorrow, campaign discussion on Wednesday, GMing tips on Thursday, building adventures on Friday, GM reviews on Saturday, rules retrospective on Sunday. We got weekly news and announcements on Monday. Then back around the horn to cartography and world building next Tuesday. If you're catching up with this on YouTube, thank you. Thanks for checking it out. Make sure to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching a video and you're enjoying it. Make comments if you want to chime in on the theme or whatever. Perhaps to give us some constructive criticism or just pat us on the back. It's all appreciated, and it's all there for you to join in. This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.